Modern cars are packed with smart tech, but the part that fails most often is the owner's common sense. Mechanics constantly see situations where the real problem isn't under the hood, but behind the wheel. We've compiled the wildest, funniest, and most absurd complaints drivers have about their cars, complaints that will make you afraid of drivers when you're out for a walk. 1. Action movies did this to him. Somewhere in there, he picked up the idea that a car moving fast enough builds a shield of air around it, and rain just slides off. So he folded the roof down, drove into a thunderstorm, and got soaked to the skin. Then he tried to give the car back. Not for a leak. He never mentioned a leak. His complaint was that his convertible obeys physics like every other object on Earth. 2. 21 days of driving with the oil pressure warning glowing on the dash. That's what this one costs. She'd noticed the symbol early on and decided it looked like a genie lamp, some hidden bonus feature the factory tucked in for fun, so she left it alone and kept going to work. The mechanic who finally saw it stopped talking mid-sentence. That light means the engine is running out of pressure right now, and by then it had. Seized solid. $5,000 for a wish she never got. Quick question. Could you name 3 symbols on your own dashboard? 3. 2 days after buying the quietest luxury car on the market, a woman came back into the showroom, hot, demanding a full refund. Her complaint was that the engine kept dying at every red light, stall after stall after stall, and she was sure it would leave her sitting somewhere on a dark road. Nothing was stalling. Electric cars don't idle. There's no engine sitting there, shaking and rumbling while you wait for the light, and that silence was the exact feature she'd paid a premium to get. 4. Heat cranked to the top, every vent aimed down at the floor, with July outside. That's what the service advisor found when he leaned into the cabin, and he never opened the hood. The woman had come in certain the engine was cooking through the floorboards, roasting her feet and ruining her shoes, and she wanted the insulation replaced. Nothing was leaking. She'd been aiming a hot air vent at her own toes for weeks and blaming the car. 5. Modern cars won't let you shut them down while they're in gear. That's a safety feature, and one man ran headfirst into it in his own driveway. He jabbed the ignition button over and over, the engine kept humming, and eventually he decided this was an emergency worth calling in. Dispatch heard him out and asked whether the transmission was in park. He went quiet. Somewhere in that quiet came a click, then nothing, because the engine finally shut off. He'd been in drive the whole time. 6. He lifted the hood and found nothing under it. No motor, no belts, just a clean empty bin. He'd stopped for snacks at a gas station and figured he'd check the oil while he was there. And now he was on the phone with police, hysterical, reporting a stolen engine. Then somebody thought to ask what he drove, a Porsche. Nobody touched his car. He'd owned it long enough to fill the tank and never learned the motor sits behind the seats. 7. A wiper arm swings in a curve. A rear window is a rectangle. Those two shapes have never gotten along, and one customer decided that had to be somebody's fault. He showed up demanding a replacement, calling his rear wiper defective because the corners of the glass stayed filthy. He wanted an explanation for why that blade wouldn't reach into the square corners, like the rubber was just being lazy about it. 8. The mechanic on this one solved it with his tongue. He ran a fingernail along the steering wheel, scraped off a little of the sticky film, and tasted it. Maple syrup. The young woman who brought the car in had been insisting the leather was defective, that it was somehow melting and coating her palms every morning. Turns out she eats pancakes on her way to work, and that wheel had been serving as her napkin for months. She paid full price for a detail job on a mess she'd been building one bite at a time. 9. He called a tow truck. That's how certain he was that the engine was seconds from blowing, all because one orange light came on in the dash. He warned the shop to expect something catastrophic. Then a mechanic strolled out, popped the little fuel door, and gave the gas cap a twist. It clicked. That was the repair. The tank has to hold a seal. His cap had been loose since the last fill-up, and the car spoke up about it. 3 hours and a few $100 over a lid. 10. 10 tons of loose animal feed sat in the barn where this man parked. He never mentioned that part. What he did mention was that squirrels had chewed through his wiring harness twice in a single month, and he wanted a refund because the manufacturer builds wiring squirrels apparently can't leave alone. Those squirrels already lived in that barn. He parked a machine full of chewable insulation in their house and then blamed the factory for what happened next. 11. Somewhere on a highway shoulder, a rental customer with a flat tire opened the trunk and found a can of sealant and a small air compressor. No spare. In his mind, that meant the agency had pulled the wheel out and sold it, and he was going to see them in court over it. The manager broke the news. Car makers dropped the spare years ago. A full spare is dead weight, and dead weight costs fuel, so they hand you a kit instead. He'd been renting cars through that entire change and never once opened a trunk to look. 12. Come July, every service department in the country starts fielding the same terrified phone call. My car is leaking. There's a puddle on the driveway under the passenger side, clear as tap water, no smell to it, and the caller wants a tow truck yesterday. It's condensation. The air conditioner pulls moisture out of the cabin air, and that moisture has to land somewhere. Your bathroom mirror does the same thing every time you shower. Nobody calls a plumber about that. 13. Steady clicking, right before every turn, and always stopping after. He decided that was a countdown. Something under the dash getting ready to go off, or something evil that had moved into his car, and he wanted the entire model recalled over it. A mechanic sat down in the driver's seat and flicked the turn signal stalk. There it was, the exact noise, the great haunting of his vehicle. Years behind the wheel, and nobody had ever told him blinkers make a sound. 14. A guy drove to a service center to tell them their sound system was broken. Not the speakers, not the wiring. His problem was the songs, all of them, terrible, and he wanted his money back on the premium audio package. The technician started the car, checked the screen, and found the source. The man's phone, paired over Bluetooth, playing the man's own library. Nothing wrong with the car. The complaint was about him. 15. The car went down a boat ramp and kept going, straight into the water of a harbor. The driver got out. Then he filed a formal complaint against the automaker. His reasoning: the map on his dash was showing a road, and the car should have been able to tell the difference between pavement and open water and hit the brakes for him. He wasn't asking for a warning beep. He wanted the vehicle to overrule the human sitting in it. 16. A dealership once had to take a brand new luxury car and deliberately wreck the best thing about it. The owner was back within days, wanting to return it over the smell, and she didn't mean mold or fuel. She meant that fresh leather, straight off the truck smell that people chase their whole lives. Her poodle hated it. Anxious the whole ride, carsick by the end of it, so she ordered the service department to strip the scent out and make the car smell secondhand. 3 days in the sun with the windows down did it. 17. Every corner she took, something heavy sloshed. She was certain the fuel tank had split and gasoline was rolling around loose inside the cabin with her, and she came into the shop flat out scared. Fair enough. A technician took it out, heard the sloshing on the first turn, pulled over, and felt around under the passenger seat. Out came a gallon jug of water, half gone, escaped from a grocery bag sometime the month before. $100 diagnostic fee, and she drove off with the jug in her lap. 18. Highway speed, and there it is. A high, thin shriek somewhere in the cabin, loud enough to drive you insane by exit 12. Shops hear this one year round. The customer always shows up convinced a door seal has failed or the windshield has worked loose from the frame. So the tech takes it out, hears the noise, and reaches over to a window switch. The rear glass climbs about 2 millimeters, and the sound stops dead. That's the entire repair. Open just wide enough to sing, shut just far enough that nobody would ever spot the gap. 19. A man is suing a navigation app because it walked him down a staircase. Not a shortcut, not a rough alley. Actual concrete steps in a city park with signs posted saying pedestrians only and no road anywhere in sight. The voice said, "Turn right," so he turned right, and his sedan went down that flight one bounce at a time. In court, his position is that the app should have understood that cars don't do stairs. The signs were in English. He just liked the phone better. 20. Somewhere in Europe, a roadside assistance operator picked up a call from an American tourist reporting that his rental had been robbed for parts. No park, no drive, nothing to select. Just a lever standing up out of the floor and one extra pedal down there with no obvious purpose. The operator got to walk him through a lost technology known as the manual gearbox. There's a whole generation now that would rather push a car than learn what that third pedal does. How many people in your life could actually get one moving? 21. Every rearview mirror has a little plastic tab underneath it. Flip it one way and headlights behind you stop burning your eyes. Flip it back and you get the bright view. One driver knocked his into night mode and never knew it. He turned up at a shop saying the mirror had gone dim, that traffic behind him was fading into gray, and he could barely pick out headlights. The tech reached in, flipped the tab, and gave him his mirror back, working exactly as built. 22. A support team spent a long time diagnosing a man's heated seats before anyone thought to ask what setting he was using. His ticket said the seats were dangerously overheating, that he was sweating through his clothes on every drive, and that something had to be defective. Nothing was. He had them cranked to maximum on purpose in Arizona in August because he believed heated seats were the ones designed to keep a driver cool. He was cooking himself in traffic and filing paperwork about it. 23. The service manager didn't need long with this one. He asked the man to check his own back pocket. Out came a king-size chocolate bar, melted flat inside its wrapper and still warm. Seconds earlier, this guy had been shouting across the counter about toxic chemicals bleeding out of his driver's seat and ruining a good pair of pants. What really happened is that he flipped on his seat heater with candy in his pocket and slow-cooked dessert straight into his own denim. The seat was fine. The pants were finished. 24. By the time he took it in, the paint along the door edge was chipped to hell. That's what happens when you slam a door onto a seatbelt buckle every day for weeks. He didn't know that's what he was doing. All he knew was that his driver's door refused to latch unless he threw his weight into it, so he decided the thing came off the assembly line crooked and he wanted it fixed under warranty. The service writer walked out, lifted the belt out of the jam, and shut the door with 2 fingers. 25. Bread flattened, eggs cracked, same result every single trip. So he took it to the internet. Long angry post, real venom in it, all about a defective trunk and a suspension so stiff it was wrecking his groceries before he got home. Then the details came out. He loads the cases of bottled water in last, right on top of everything soft, and then he takes the speed bumps in his neighborhood at 30. The trunk was never the problem. The problem was the man loading it. 26. The seatbelts in his brand new truck were defective. That was his position, delivered loudly in the middle of the dealership floor. He'd been forcing that latch home with everything he had, and it would not click. A salesman followed him out to the truck. The belt in the man's hand was the driver's. The buckle he kept stabbing at was the passenger's. He'd been strapping himself in on a diagonal across his own chest, wondering why the truck wouldn't cooperate. 27. This is the one everybody's heard a version of, and it still lands. A man in a motorhome set his cruise control to 60 on the highway, then got up out of the driver's seat and walked to the back to fix himself a sandwich. Nobody was steering. The thing left the road and wrecked. He walked away from it, which is lucky, and the first thing he did was call the manufacturer to complain. His argument was that cruise control ought to include the steering, since that's what cruising means. He wanted somebody to pay for building a motorhome that can't think. 28. 20 comments into a forum thread. People are still hunting for a bad sensor. The guy who started it wants to permanently kill the seatbelt chime on his passenger side. It goes off constantly on his solo drive to work. Everyone's guessing. Then he mentions, in passing, that he throws his gym bag and his laptop onto that seat every morning. There's a weight sensor in the cushion. He'd been convincing his own car that somebody was sitting there riding unbuckled. 29. Lane keep assist. Watches the painted lines and gives the wheel a nudge if you start wandering out of your lane without signaling. One driver had no idea any of that existed. All he knew was that something invisible kept grabbing the wheel and pulling against him every time he slid into the next lane, so he reported his car as possessed. A ghost in the steering column. The fix was free and took no parts at all. He just had to start using his turn signal like every other driver on the road. 30. Under the hood, wrapped tight around the horn, a bird had built her nest. Straw, twigs, feathers, packed in solid. The owner had no idea it was there. He'd come in demanding a warranty replacement because his horn had gone soft, nothing like the blast his old pickup put out, and he was certain the part was defective. Every angry honk he fired off in traffic went straight into a wall of nesting material and baby birds. Nobody ahead of him ever heard a thing. 31. A technician spent an afternoon in the passenger seat while a woman hollered commands into her own car. She'd brought it in to return it. Her theory was that the voice system had picked her out personally, that something about the way she talks rubbed it wrong. Meanwhile, her heavy metal was going at full volume, right on top of the microphone she was shouting into. She never turned it down. She just got louder, and the car never heard a word of it. 32. Rain starts, and inside this man's car the glass goes white before he's out of the driveway. Every time. He'd wipe it with his sleeve and it would come right back. So he filed a complaint calling the defroster defective and demanded a warranty fix. The technician didn't need long with it. Recirculation button pressed in and glowing on the dash, that's the one that seals the cabin off from outside air. He'd been sitting in a closed box, breathing his own damp breath back at himself, then blaming the car for the fog. 33. His key fob was hanging on a hook in the kitchen. His car was 3 blocks away at the curb, refusing to start. He was already on the phone with the service department, hot, telling them they'd sold him junk. The technician asked where he kept the key, and the answer came back without a second of doubt. The kitchen hook. Push-button start listens for a fob in your pocket, not down the street, not through a wall. 34. His complaint said the car was built wrong. Every morning, the sun came through his side window and blinded him. The visor over his head did nothing because it only covers the windshield. True enough, right up until you unclip it in the middle and swing it over against the door. He owned this one 3 years. 3 years of driving with one cheek cooked, because moving a piece of plastic 4 inches never occurred to him. 35. 100 pounds per square inch into ordinary passenger tires at a gas station air pump. Then he got on the highway. They let go out there at speed. Then he came back furious at the tire shop, claiming they'd sold him tires that blow for no reason. Then he explained his method. He'd stopped at 100 because 100 sounded like completely full, the way you'd top off anything else. The right number is printed on a sticker in his own door jamb. Do you know yours, or have you been eyeballing it for years? 36. Shortest job of that tow driver's week, and he still had to drive out for it. He rolled up expecting to load a dead car, got in, reached down, and dropped the handbrake lever back where it belongs. Done. The owner had called in sure the transmission was finished. The car wouldn't pull. It wouldn't get up to speed. Something hot and nasty was coming off the back wheels. 20 miles he'd driven like that. The parking brake was on for every one of them. 37. There were lines on her screen, yellow and red, cutting across the picture every time she shifted into reverse. So she came back to the dealership furious, demanding a new lens that same day, because somebody had clearly scratched the glass. The salesman dropped the car into reverse and turned the steering wheel. The lines bent along with it. They're drawn by the software to show where the bumper is headed, and the lens was spotless. 38. 3 heavy-duty rubber mats, stacked one on top of the other in the driver's footwell. He'd layered them up to keep the carpet nice. What he built instead was a rubber platform under the gas pedal. The pedal ran out of travel halfway down, and the truck would not go any faster than that. He came in, sure the transmission was slipping, and braced to buy a new one. The mechanic never opened the hood. He looked at the floor. 39. He accused a Tesla dealership of setting him up to void his warranty. The crime, refusing to change the oil in his Model 3 on the grounds that there isn't any. No engine in there, nothing that burns, nowhere for oil to go. He booked that appointment himself. When the staff explained, he heard a dodge, a way to deny him service now and cancel his coverage later. He bought an electric car and never asked what electric meant. 40. For a month, a man drove a genuinely fast sports sedan that couldn't get out of its own way. It felt heavy. It wouldn't pull past a certain speed no matter what he did with the pedal. He figured the turbo had let go, or the transmission was on its way out, and he brought it in expecting the worst. The scan tool answered in under a minute. Valet mode was on. That's the setting that caps speed and power for the kid parking cars at a restaurant, and Dad had switched it on himself. 41. Every day at 5 in the afternoon, something in his car started screaming. Not a beep, not a rattle. A low, dragging howl that came out of nowhere and stopped on its own. He quit driving the thing. He was scared, and he'd made his peace with the idea that something evil had moved in with him. The mechanics found it under the passenger seat. A Furby his daughter lost months back, batteries nearly flat, its chirpy little voice dragged down into something from a horror movie. 42. 64 ounces of fountain soda is a bucket. Call it the size of a fire extinguisher, and this man took his everywhere. Then he bought a sports car that cost about as much as a house. The cup holders in the console were built too small to take it. So he tried to hand the car back under lemon law. Not for a fire. Not for a gearbox letting go on the freeway. He wanted it declared defective because his drink wouldn't fit. 43. The dealership answered in public, right under her review, with a single screenshot. An arrow on it pointed at the window lock button on the driver's armrest. She'd given that minivan 2 stars and warned every parent reading that its wiring couldn't be trusted. Her kids' windows kept quitting, she said, leaving them stuck back there with no air. The button sits under the driver's elbow. She'd been leaning on it since the day she drove the van home. 44. Rain hits the windshield, he flicks the stalk, and both blades drag across the glass with a shriek you can feel in your teeth. Water goes sideways and stays there. So he wrote a review taking the dealership apart over defective wipers, ruining his new windshield. The service team caught it from across the lot. Both blades still wore the bright yellow covers they ship in from the factory. Would you have checked the blades or gone straight to the internet? 45. The fix was a thumb. The service advisor licked it and ran it across the lens on the back bumper. A layer of dried road grime came off in one swipe. Underneath was a picture sharp enough to read a plate. The owner had demanded a new camera under warranty because his screen showed a brown smear and he decided the sensor was failing. That lens sits inches above the pavement, catching everything the road throws. Nobody had ever cleaned it. 46. Something red and sticky was coming out of the ceiling light of her minivan, dripping over the middle row. Mom's mind went straight to fluid getting in through the roof somehow. She booked it in as an emergency. The technician pulled the cover off the fixture and stopped right there. One gummy bear, jammed against a hot bulb by a kid who was never going to confess, slowly stretching itself into a long candy drip. That answer cost her a full diagnostic fee. 47. The tires were down to the steel. Wire showing through the tread, the kind that would snag a glove, and it was every corner. That's what the service manager found when he went out to look, because the claim on his desk said the car had somehow become magnetized and was pulling nails off the highway toward itself. Filed seriously, as a manufacturing defect. He'd been picking up flats constantly, and this was his explanation. Rubber is the only thing standing between a nail and your air, and he had none left. 48. He came home from a hunt with 2 soaked boots and an idea. Out came the drill. 4 holes straight down through the metal floor of his truck, so the water off his gear would have somewhere to go. Then the complaints started. Every puddle he drove through came up through the carpet and soaked the cabin, and he was certain the door seals had gone bad. The mechanic pulled the mats back and found daylight under all 4 holes. 49. Somebody in that line had a front row seat for all 3 laps. The guy pulls up to the pump, finds his filler door on the far side, and figures the fix is to loop around the island. He comes back around, far side again. He runs it a 3rd time, angrier every pass because a circle keeps landing him in the same spot he left. He needed a U-turn. What he kept running was a carousel. There's a small arrow next to the fuel gauge that tells you which side your tank is on. Nobody ever looks at it. 50. There is no such thing as headlight fluid. Never has been. It's a prank handed down from parent to teenager, and this teenager got it right after failing a state inspection for headlight alignment. Dad said the fluid was probably low, so the kid drove to an auto parts store, walked up to the counter, and asked for a bottle of headlight adjustment fluid. Dead serious. Wallet out. Headlights get aimed with a screwdriver. The clerk was very kind about it. 51. Red light and the engine quits underneath you. Green and it fires straight back up. Drivers meeting this for the first time do not take it well. They come in convinced the alternator is cooked or that the battery is about to strand them in an intersection. Auto start-stop. Built in at the factory, on purpose, so the engine stops drinking fuel while you sit at a light going nowhere. Yours probably does it. Did you hunt down the off switch on day 1, or did you make your peace with it? 52. From behind there was nothing there. No taillights, no glow, just a dark shape rolling down a black highway. Then a patrol car pulled in behind it and put the lights on. The driver argued the point. His lights were on, he said. He could see his own dashboard glowing right in front of him. Daytime running lights burn at the front and nowhere else, and a dash lights up on its own no matter what. Next time you're out after dark, start counting the cars in front of you with nothing on in back. 53. Her car turns black at night, and she wanted her money back over it. The paint is called midnight blue. In daylight, it's blue, exactly like the sample, exactly like it looked on the lot. Once the sun goes down, it reads black. Same as every dark blue thing that has ever existed, including the midnight sky they named it after. She put all of that in writing and sent it in. Somebody at that dealership had to sit down and compose a serious answer about how darkness works. Every one of these stories proves that no amount of innovation can save us from our own ignorance. We buy expensive machines, but refuse to spend 5 minutes learning how they work, choosing to blame everyone else instead. Be honest. Could you confidently name what every single warning light on your own dashboard actually means? Honest answer wins my respect. Drop a like if this was worth your time, and subscribe so the next batch lands on your feed.